A bunch of new things today for Starfield. Bethesda have dropped a massive timeline giving players insight into the game's lore and history. Meanwhile, apparently, review keys for the game are going out. And don't forget, tomorrow is the official Starfield Q&A. So, what's all this about review keys, I hear you say? Well, it turns out there's been some confusion online about when reviewers, websites such as Eurogamer, PC Gamer, all the biggies are going to get their review keys. And is it going to allow enough time for the game to get a comprehensive review? Turns out that Tom Henderson of Insider Gaming has said that the review keys, are going out this week. That will give reviewers around about 2 weeks or so to get some fairly decent coverage of the game, although to be fair that may not be enough considering the intended scope and scale of this game. But at least it's better than just a few days. As for content creators, there's been some questions as to when or if content creators are going to get keys themselves. Well, Bethesda did say a few months back over on Twitter that they invite content creators to apply, and if you want to get one if you're a content creator, then do check the Keymailer website. But as yet, there's no information on when these are going to be accepted or when they're going to be sent out. Either way, regardless of when content creators get their keys, the version sent out on Keymailer is going to activate the same day as everyone else, which is the 1st of September, at least for those people who have the premium copy. Now, moving on to the Q&A, that is scheduled for tomorrow. There's a whole bunch of questions that have been submitted to the community, and this will be taking place, the Q&A will be taking place over on Discord. There's a link in the video description if you want to check that out for yourself. This should mean that there'll be a whole bunch of brand new information available for Starfield very soon, so I for one am certainly looking forward to hearing about all of that. So just to be absolutely clear, the Q&A is taking place on the 16th of August at 1 PM Eastern Time. Okay, so with those pieces of news out of the way, let's move on to the new timeline. This is a massive lore drop from Bethesda on Starfield, and as said, gives us some insight as to the game's history. It all starts a few decades from now when humanity finally arrives on Mars. It then takes another 50 years before humans are living fully in space. Now it's the 22nd century when things really do kick off. In 2156, humans finally arrive in Alpha Centauri. It takes a further 3 years, 2059, for the United Colonies to be established. This is a centralized republic with numerous member colonies across multiple star systems, and it wields humanity's strongest military force. It takes just 1 year to start the founding of the massive city, the game's largest city, New Atlantis. This happens in 2160. And in 2161, the city becomes the capital of the United Colonies. But of course, New Atlantis is far from the only city out there. Aquila City is founded in 2160 by Solomon Coe. This is a city that is styled more along the lines of the American frontier. It's a largely lawless city where people can live their lives as and how they want. It seems pretty obvious that at some point New Atlantis and Aquila City are going to be at odds with each other. Eventually, in 2188, Solomon Coe invites the star system of Volley to join Cheyenne in an alliance. The corporation Chronomark manufactures a line of smartwatches as well. This seems to be irrelevant because, smartwatches appear more than once in much of the gaming footage we've seen. However, the far more significant event happens in 2189 when the Freestar Collective is established. Now, this is a libertarian confederation of 3 distinct star systems, and it possesses humanity's second largest military, second only to that of the United Colonies. 2 massive societies then, both with distinct ideologies and backed up by huge militaries. What could possibly go wrong? Well, we find out in 2194, the United Colonies position the Clinic star station around Deepala in Narion. The inhabitants of Narion demand that the United Colonies remove the clinic, and when the UC refuses, they vote to join the Freestar Collective, only bolstering the size and military power, of the Freestar Collective. By 2195, the Freestar Collective feel as though they're under threat, and so are mobilized to protect Narion from the United Colonies. Pretty clear where this is headed, isn't it? In short, things continue to escalate, and by 2196, the Freestar Collective mobilise. The United Colonies then deploy a fleet to Narion. Freestar responds with its own fleet, and the obvious war begins, the Narion War. And that takes us up to the 23rd century. Now, the 23rd century is fairly light in terms of entries on the timeline, but a few significant events do happen. In 2216, the Treaty of Narion is signed by the United Colonies and the Freestar Collective, ending the Narion War. The treaty also marks the first formal use of the term the Settled Systems. So that works out to around about 20 years for that particular war. The idea of the settled systems, this concept, also implies that humanity, by and large, kind of gets on. It gives the impression that yes, space is big, but we are collectively inhabiting this space. In either event, the Freestar Collective continues to evolve, and in 2221, the Freestar Rangers were founded to serve as an elite protective and investigative force for the Freestar citizenry. And then in 2275, perhaps one of the most significant events, at least in terms of the game, happens. Constellation is founded by Sebastian Banks. The Lodge, Constellation's headquarters, is built in New Atlantis. It is a space exploration organization intended to uncover the mysteries of the galaxy. And this brings us up to the 24th century. This is a particularly busy period for the game, at least in terms of lore, as the timeline contains a lot of different entries. The first entry then for the 24th century is a seemingly innocuous one. It says in 2305, Barrett joins a Constellation. Now, I'm not quite sure who Barrett is. Obviously an NPC and likely to be one of significance. We have seen him in some of the footage. Now, in 2307, the Freestar Collective begins farming on the planet Vesta in the star system of Lunara. This in and of itself doesn't seem too bad, at least not until 2308, when the United Colonies objects to the Freestar colony in Lunara, claiming that Freestar is expanding into a fourth star system, and this is in violation of the Treaty of Narion. After diplomatic talks then stall, the United Colonies besieges Vesta and kills all of its defenders. This begins the Colony Wars. This is something we've seen some glimpses of in one of the animated episodes that were released a few weeks back. You can see some of that on the screen right here, where we got to see the mechs conflict fighting with each other. In 2310, another significant event, at least for the player, happens. Constellation acquires its first artifact, but then store it in Constellation's archives without further study. Why is this a significant event for the player? Well, as we know from the trailers and the other footage, the player discovers one of these artifacts, and let's say it unravels, or leads rather, to a rather large mystery. In any event, it seems for the meantime that remains largely quiet. In 2311, the Battle of Cheyenne occurs. A flotilla of military and civilian Freestar ships manages to defeat the United Colonies Navy forces, and this ends the Colony Wars. Ultimately, this defeat led to the creation of another faction. In 2315, the United Colonies Vanguard is founded, and this is a civilian navy pledged to protect UC member colonies and interests. Very clearly a reaction to being defeated by the Freestar Collective in the Colony Wars. Now, the next few years I'm not going to go into too much detail on, but basically it involves a lot of people leaving various factions and heading towards Constellation, that faction which is entirely focused on exploration. It seems that these people are key figures within the Starfield world. And in 2326, Barrett, who we mentioned previously, uncovers the artifact that's still laying in the Constellation's archives. And then finally, in 2328, Constellation purchases the star station L868, and at Barrett's suggestion modifies it into the Eye. This is likely the space station we've seen in a whole bunch of footage from Starfield. Specifically, way back when the game was originally announced, it's pretty much iconic at this point. The Eye then is a deep space scanner. We can only guess at its purpose, but it's quite possibly tied into a bit of information we heard a while ago. Spoiler. Yeah, wait if you're don't want it to be spoiled. But there is something apparently called Unity, that exists at the center of reality or the center of existence. And just maybe the eye is being used to scan for this, or perhaps it's being used to scan for other artifacts. And then finally, in 2330, the events of Starfield begin. So that pretty much brings us up to date with everything that's occurring within the world of Starfield. From not too far into our current day future, right up to the moment the events of the game begin. It's a pretty comprehensive timeline and really does give us a whole lot of context as to the game world's setting. So yeah, pretty interesting to see all this. Do let me know what you think about it in the comments section below. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you guys and girls next time.